I'm Ben,
And I'm Zach.
and welcome to the Movie Vault.
Today we're going to dive into a great movie that Ben and I found. It's called,
Good time.
and it was a pretty good time,
Although
wasn't
I
it?
don't think anybody in the movie was actually having a good time. I'm gonna be honest.
True. I think it was more of a joke for the time.
Yeah, I think it's a joke, but the creators are thinking that the audience is gonna have a good time, and they figured that some critics could just make some jokes about it. So just like us.
And the creators had a good idea because it was kind of a good time. So let's dive in. So first we were going to explain what happened in the movie. So Ben, go ahead.
Okay, so this movie is quite the complex story, and so this is gonna be fun to do. So we start out in this scene, and we watch a psychologist interview this guy. We don't know his name, and he seems kind of like he's kind of out there, like he's not responding to everything the guy says, and the psychologist seems kind of mean because he's like making him cry.
Yeah.
And this psychologist is like the typical psychologist wouldn't you say? He's like white, stringy hair, kind
Yeah.
of weird.
And he starts yelling at the kid. It was a very intense first scene. Or he doesn't start yelling.
Yeah,
Yes, he does.
there's something about his grandma and him throwing stuff at his grandma and his
Yeah.
grandma yelling at him.
He was drilling him hard. That's what it was.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't even notice that it wasn't Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
I thought that the guy in the psychologist's offices was Robert Pattinson, so I was like all excited. I was like, oh, it's Robert Pattinson. It actually wasn't. It's actually one of the directors of the movie.
Robert Pattinson is gonna be the new Batman.
Yeah. So this was the first movie I watched. I think he was in Twilight, which I'm probably never gonna watch,
Yeah.
and he was in something else.
Why?
Uh,
Twilight's so good. You should watch it.
Okay, maybe we'll do Twilight on the podcast sometime.
No, it's-
Well, another character who we find out later, his name is Connie, pulls up into the room and takes the other guy out, and that guy's name is Nick. So Nick has a disability, which is why he's in the psychologist's office, and I didn't know that at first, so I feel kind of bad. I might have said some rude things about him.
Possibly.
Then we go to the title sequence, which I think was pretty good. I don't really remember what it was like, but there was some music and stuff.
Yeah, it was a good title sequence.
And then
5 out of 10.
not the best title sequence. We'll talk about the best.
Ben and I
title
really
sequence.
care about title sequences.
I actually
It makes
think
or breaks the movie.
Title
for us.
sequences can really add a lot to a movie, but they sometimes don't.
Yeah.
So it just depends. We go straight into the bank robbery naturally.
Yeah. So first off, I don't know if we mentioned it. The two guys, Nick and Connie, are actually brothers, and he's very protective of his little brother because his brother has a hearing impediment and speech impediment, and yeah, he has a few problems, and he's been trying to work through them. But his brother's very supportive of him, and it's kind of sweet, isn't it, Ben? It kind of made me tear up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the theme that we're gonna find in this movie is that I don't know if you disagree with this, but it seems like Connie is the only guy who cares about his brother, who actually and thinks that he actually knows how he can help him in a way that. But by helping him, his version of helping him is taking him to a bank robbery with him.
Yeah. So in the next scene, after the psychologist's office, they go and rob a bank with masks of African American men as disguises.
I don't know that they could do this in 2020. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest.
It wasn't. Yeah, probably.
So
not. I don't
might
know.
have to dock some PC points there
Yeah.
from the movie. But I mean, I think it was a pretty realistic bank robbery scene.
It was. It was pretty good. They took the money from the bank teller and they take it into a taxi and get away, and they seem really glad because the cops aren't after them. But then they open the money, and as a lot of banks have, there's red dye and some wads of cash, and it exploded all over them. So they were all red and
Yeah.
easy to see from far away.
Yeah, this is interesting because I had seen this scene before actually in some YouTube video, so it's funny watching it again. But I didn't know until I had watched that scene that there actually were dye packs. But I guess I had never really considered robbing a bank seriously, so it's good to keep in mind if you're ever going to go rob a bank to not use,
Yeah.
to be careful of the dye packs.
Yeah, open the money when you get home. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Keep it in a duffel bag until you get home.
So they actually, they go into
They do get chased because Nick...
They go into the Domino's bathroom first to steal the money.
True. The
They-
most important part of
Domino's
the movie. They go to the
must
Domino's
have
bathroom.
help fund this movie or something. Cause
Yeah.
they,
There's no placement stuff going on at all.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then they do get chased because the police officer stops by and just wants to question them.
Yeah.
And
But
then,
the little brother Nick runs away because he gets scared.
yeah, so Nick doesn't quite, he probably I don't exactly know what disability he has, but he doesn't exactly know what's going on in the situation or how to act.
The red dye was in his eyes, and he has eye problems too, so it kind of added to it. So he was a
Yeah.
little freaked out.
And so then he starts running away, and they catch him. They don't catch Connie.
Yeah, so Nick gets away, or Nick gets caught, but Connie gets away, and with the red money.
So Connie's got the red money, and Nick is in jail where he gets. Obviously, now this is what I didn't understand. Did they just put people who have mental disabilities in jail with everyone else?
I mean, I guess because it happened in this movie, and it's
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, movies do tell you what happens in real life. So he goes to the jail, and then he's messing around with the TV.
Obviously.
Don't mess around with the TV.
Or Big Pete will come up and smack you.
Yeah, because I think he might have actually attacked first, though.
Yeah.
Something happens.
Either way, there's a squabble in the.
And his face got pretty beat in.
Yeah, it did.
So.
It's a great visual scene. You should look at it. Yep.
So then, I'm not sure a good visual scene.
Yeah.
Connie goes to the bail bondsman.
Yep.
To try to get a bail bond for his brother.
Yep. To get him out of jail. And at this point, Connie doesn't care about the money. He just wants his brother to get out of jail. So he's trying to convince this guy to take the money that's all red because the red dye exploded all over the money. But the guy says, no, I can't take this money. I'm going to need $10,000. So then that puts Connie in kind of a hard situation because he has to get Nick out, but he doesn't have the money.
So it's not good. And although I think it's worth something still, I don't know how that works exactly. But so he tries to go scam his lady friend. I don't know what their relationship is. Presumably his girlfriend. But, I feel like Connie's...
He didn't care about her like a girlfriend.
Yeah, okay. We got to talk about the relationship between... I got to look up what her name is. I should have had the good time.
Connie and Unknown Girl 1.
She's played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who's in The Hateful Eight, which is a movie that I love.
We're not...
And she's really good in The Hateful Eight.
It's not that we just know the names of the guys in films that we watch.
Actually, I didn't know Connie's name the whole movie. I just looked that up.
True. They don't really call each other by names.
Okay, so she's Corey Ellman, and her grandma's name is Lauren. And they're both like... they both got some sort of New York accent going.
Yeah, so Connie goes to this lady friend to ask her to pay for Nick to get out of jail. And this lady apparently has some kind of crush or feelings for Connie or something. She has some kind of attachment. And it's not a healthy one because she offered to put $10,000 on her credit card. So
it seems like this is some sort of younger guy, older lady dynamic.
Yeah, which we'll see later on in the movie.
Because I'm pretty sure Connie would be a guy who's in his 20s, and what's her face? Corey looks kind of like she's pushing 40, like maybe late 30s. Yeah. So you got kind of that. The older lady has more money, and the younger guy is kind of dynamic. We don't really delve too much into that though. That's just kind of assumed.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, so. Her card gets declined. She gets in a fight with her grandma. It's a great scene, actually. They're just in this bank or this money area, and all this chaos is happening. Connie's trying to convince the guy that what do you call it? Bail bondsman. Bail bondsman. Connie's trying to convince the bail bondsman to get his brother out of jail. Just use the red money. Bail bondsman keeps saying no. In the background is Corey, the girl that has an attachment to Connie. And she's calling her grandma saying that she wants to pay $10,000 on this credit card, and everybody's just yelling at once.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a good talk over each other type scene.
Yeah, it's like my house basically. It's like breakfast. Yeah.
It's like breakfast at the Leewolds. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's see. Then something important happens. Oh yeah. What happens is...
Oh yeah, I remember now.
I remember now. What happens is the bail bondsman finds out that. Nick is no longer in prison, but is actually at the hospital.
Yes. So Nick goes to the hospital because he got his face bashed in for trying to change the TV channel. Don't change the TV channel.
Don't change it.
Yeah.
That's basically the moral of it. I don't even know why we're talking about the rest of it.
That's true.
So he goes to the hospital, basically.
Yeah, so Connie finds out that his brother's in the hospital for getting beat up, and he goes to the hospital to try to break him out, because that's probably easier to get someone out of than an actual jail.
Now, we don't know what he's doing at first, so at first we're like, is he just going to visit him? Like,
they don't explain what's going on during the movie. It's your job to figure it out, basically.
Yeah, and that's why, if you're listening to us without having watched this movie, which you probably should have said that we were going to give spoilers because we've already spoilered.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
by the
alert,
way.
By the way. But yeah, it's much better if you don't really know what's going on because you have to use your brain to figure it out. Good,
Yeah.
good.
I had to ask Ben a couple times what was going
Yeah,
on. I was
maybe
a little
watch it with other
confused.
people.
It went above my head.
That's not as confusing as Inception, but like it's confusing.
Yeah, I still don't even get Inception. So, anywho. Yeah, so he goes to the hospital, sees his brother in bandages. He has bandages all over his face because his face got beaten in. And there's a cop, or a prison guard, I guess, standing outside the hospital room. So when he waits for the prison guard to leave, and Connie goes into the hospital and breaks his brother out of the hospital room and takes him in a wheelchair into a bus. So Connie has nowhere to go. And he's in this bus, and he's talking to this African-American older lady. And they become kind of, not really friends, but they just talk nicely about each other. The lady gets off the bus and says, "Good luck, I hope your brother gets better." And then they get dropped off, Connie and Nick do. And then, since Connie has nowhere to go, Connie decides, okay, I'm going to go to that older African-American lady's house, so that he goes to their house.
Yeah, and then they get there, and she's like, what are you doing here, obviously?
Yeah.
And this is where we realize that Connie has a gift with talking to people.
He does.
Because Connie talks to people throughout this whole movie and convinces them to do some crazy stuff.
True.
And so, he doesn't usually tell the truth. He kind of bends it.
Yeah.
To where, because there's a lot of things that he said to get her to let him stay and call the phone that weren't true at all. But he just needed to conveniently convince her to.
Yeah, if Connie was a politician, he would be great. But he decided to get into drugs and stuff. So.
Yeah. And then he uses her phone, which is the main goal, and he tries to call his girlfriend and text her. Corey. But she doesn't answer. She doesn't answer at all. And so he's kind of stuck at this house. So he kind of convinces the lady to let him stay, I think.
The lady says, "Oh, no, you stay at my house." She was actually a very sweet lady.
Yeah,
best character in the movie, probably.
Probably the most innocent and best character.
Although, there's one guy at the end. Never mind. Keep going.
And so we're also introduced to the daughter of this lady, who is always texting. Granddaughter. She is always texting. She's very rude to her grandma.
Yeah.
She's the epitome of what is wrong
with our generation.
With Generation Z. And if she had TikTok, it would have been even worse.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we get sweet old lady and, kind of normal teenager, I would say, though. She's normal.
Granddaughter,
yes. I keep saying daughter. I don't know why I thought
okay.
that. And so we kind of get this. He's trying to figure out what to do, and he takes the brother kind of to this room upstairs, and then he goes back downstairs. And this is where we get the most awkward scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, Ben and I had to look down for a minute from the TV. It was a little awkward.
Yeah. So what happens is he and the young girl whose name is let's see what her name is.
I think her name was Annie.
Yeah, I think it's Annie, which sounds about right. And they're on the couch watching TV. This is where I question the grandmother's judgment.
Well, here's the thing. So Connie. Obviously, Ben said he's like in his 20s. This girl stated that she's 16 in this movie.
Yes.
So
you got to keep that in mind. The grandmother is not at home. Left her granddaughter with a random guy. And then on the news, there's an announcement that there's a manhunt. Guess who they're hunting? Connie.
Yeah.
And whoever. Actually, they might have been hunting the guy who was in the prison, actually.
It was Connie, too.
So he doesn't want her to see that. And so... what does he do? He makes out with her.
Yeah.
The only logical thing to do in that situation, correct?
Yeah, he had I think he had the controller in his hand too, so I feel like he could have changed the channel or something.
Yeah. So what we really see Connie's true colors here and how much he is willing to do to get away with what he's doing. And honestly, if you keep tabs of like all the things that he keeps doing that are like adding to his like criminal case, like he didn't really think that through because like doing anything with a minor not gonna help your criminal case when you get to court.
And like you got to develop a relationship, right? You got to
yeah. At least if you're gonna
let's just say they took it a little further, but they didn't fully consummate or have full coitus. They didn't have full coitus. But they got interrupted, actually.
They got close, but not that close.
Yeah.
So, fortunately...
What base do you think?
It was 2.5, probably.
Okay,
maybe.
so like...
But then it was an out.
They
still had their clothes on.
It was a pop fly, because they got out.
Yeah.
Because they got interrupted.
Yeah, it was a pop fly. They got interrupted, and I think, not that this really means anything because he did it anyway, but I don't think he really cared. He was just doing it to get away with what he was doing. But anyway, his brother starts making noise, and he goes upstairs.
Yeah, his brother's staying in another room. His brother's not watching anything happening. It's okay.
And this is where we get.
Sure.
This is where we get another twist, yet another one.
Yes. Go ahead.
So the guy is going crazy. He doesn't know where he is. Nick, presumably. But then we go over and realize that it is not Nick who he took out of the hospital.
Connie accidentally took out the wrong person from the hospital because he couldn't tell because there were face bandages on him. And this guy wakes up and he is freaking out. He takes off his bandages and he has a huge... His whole face is like messed up because...
Yeah, it's all messed up. We'll find out later why it's messed up.
Yeah.
But for being somebody who was just randomly taken out of the hospital, surprisingly, this guy who we found out his name is Ray reacts pretty well, I would say.
Yeah.
Like
Ray's a chill guy. He
like
really
Ray was like not mad. He was confused, but he wasn't upset, and he realized that he needed to do like get along with Connie to get out of the situation that they were both in.
If I were taken from a hospital unknowingly, I feel like I would be a little upset. But Ray handled it very well.
So Connie, Nick, and Annie all get in, steal their grandma's car, or Annie's grandma's car.
Yep.
Which, poor old lady, she got taken advantage of a lot in this movie.
She got taken advantage of, but she did leave her granddaughter with an older guy.
Yeah, so
in her house.
It's not the smartest judgment.
Night.
It's hard though because you want to be hospitable to people, but you can't be stupid.
But at what cost?
At what cost too? Yeah, you know that people who roam around the streets of New York at that late at night, not always the best people. But they drive to the hospital, but they realize that they're not going to be able to get Nick out because there are cops everywhere.
Cops are surrounding the hospital.
And so they drive to White Castle to regroup. As you do, you go to White Castle to figure out your plan.
White Castle is where lots of crimes are planned. Let's just say that.
Yeah, there's probably been a lot of crimes there. Hey, we had a correction from our producer. The grandma did not leave. She just was knocked the frick out because she takes silicone pills. So, but that's not really that big of a deal. It doesn't change the fact you shouldn't fall asleep and not know where your granddaughter is. I would be making my granddaughter also take silicone. Well, actually, if you're both asleep, I don't really know what to do in this situation, actually, because that could be bad, too.
It could go bad either way. Let's just say the grandma was not a good she was bad grandma. Like bad grandpa the movie, but
she wasn't not nice. She just wasn't smart.
At all.
At all. So anyway, we're back at the hospital. We're back at White Castle actually, and they realize that they need to regroup and have a plan. So Annie gets out to buy them White Castle, and then
which is also nice because she was kind of like semi-kidnapped.
Yeah,
so like that's kind of nice to buy them. You're kidnapped.
Yeah, and she didn't escape either, which she could have, but that might have been more dangerous actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what Annie should have done in this situation. But she was in a pretty bad situation here, not a good one.
But this is where the some levity actually happens in this pretty depressing movie.
It's a pretty depressing movie, even though it's presented in kind of a cool way. It's still kind of like everything's going bad.
Yeah, but so while they're waiting for their White Castle order, because obviously, even though it showed nobody in line at White Castle, it still took forever.
Yeah, this was like the longest White Castle order. I mean, I wouldn't. It's White Castle. I mean,
but I feel like their food is so cheaply made and like preservatives that like.
Yeah, but if you work at White Castle, like I mean, comment if you work at White Castle.
We don't even have a comment section. But
send us an email at the email that we don't have yet.
Yes, just shout it in the air.
And
just
say
shout it right now.
Whether you like work fast or work pretty slow, because I'm guessing from this movie that they might be taking a dig at White Castle here.
Yeah, I bet maybe they were on pills too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's like Waffle House.
So we get this flashback scene, which flashback scenes can be kind of,
stupid.
Like, it depends on how you do the flashback scene. But this was one of the better flashback scenes.
I think it was the best part of the movie, this part.
Yeah, this part was probably the best part of the movie.
Anywho, Ray starts describing what happened to him and how he ended up in that hospital. And basically, the story is he was on acid. It started out on acid, and he was at an arcade, just, chilling out, playing skee ball.
On acid, which must be pretty dope.
Yeah. He was caught in a random raid. So one of his friends was getting caught for stealing something. I think he stole Coke. Was it money or Coke?
Something. No, he just robbed the store next door.
Oh yeah, he robbed the store next door and he came to the arcade like.
And he just pulled up and like he must have been on acid too because he was like, "Look, I got all this money." Like, why would you?
Yeah. So then the cops
that?
take down this guy and notice that Ray is on acid. So then Ray goes and runs away from the cops and goes into this like Funland carnival area.
Yeah, it's like that. They must be in the arcade in Funland or something.
Yeah. It looked cool. I mean, it was a place that I would probably go to.
Yeah, and then they go into the arcade and they hide the bottle of acid, which is apparently worth quite a bit of money.
I don't know how Ray got into that acid because how could he get that money? Because he seemed kind of poor.
I think he was friends with the guy who was making it, and I think he just gave him some acid.
Oh, the big bald guy. Okay, yeah, unnamed bald guy.
His name's Khalif.
Khalif.
There's this other guy who's making the acid. I don't know what his name is.
Yeah. Anyway, Ray he's running away from the cops, hides the acid in this Funland area, gets into a cab. The cab driver realizes that he's on acid and doesn't let him escape from the cops.
Yeah. The cab guy's getting pretty mad because he realizes that he's not gonna pay, and so.
True, it's all about the money.
Yeah, and so he's gonna rat on him to the cops because he's not gonna pay. He probably gets drug addicts in his car all the time, and he's getting pretty annoyed at them.
Anywho, Ray decides I can either go to jail or jump out of this moving cab, so he jumps out of the moving cab as any sane person would do.
Right, and then obviously that does not go well for him. His face gets pretty hurt, and he goes to the hospital.
Which is also another good visual moment for his face. Yeah.
So we got 2 good face injuries right here.
Yeah.
So this was probably the most exciting.
What's the director of this movie?
The Safdie Brothers.
They got some kind of face injury fetish or something.
Yeah, something's going on there with face injuries. You should watch their other movie. Actually, we'll get into talking about their other movie that came out last year and how it compares to this one. So then we get back to the White Castle where Annie brings them the sliders and stuff. They probably said what they ordered. I don't know.
But here's the thing. So his friend, the friend that was on acid and came and robbed that store and came to the arcade to where Ray was, also hid his stash of money in the Funland. So Ray hid his acid in the Funland and his friend hid his money in the Funland.
So we got to get back to Funland is what we're realizing.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So because what Connie realizes is that if they can use that money to pay off the bail bond and he can help him get to the money. So it's like a mutual deal, I think.
And Ray, being pretty chill, decides like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah. And so then they pull up to Funland, which they have
with
to break
Annie.
into.
Annie comes back from White Castle.
Yeah, Annie, they take her, but they're not gonna. They don't really tell her what's going on.
Yeah,
because that's what she was in White Castle. She comes back.
She doesn't care because she trusts Connie because Connie's like that con man.
Yeah.
Ooh, con man Connie. That's
I bet that had nothing to do with how they named the character.
I don't know.
So they actually have an interesting system for getting into it because it has a chain link fence with barbed wire.
Yeah.
So they pull out the car mats and put it over the barbed
Which
wire.
why does a Funland have?
Probably because it's
chain fence
around the New York area and there's probably crime. So.
Yeah, but does that keep the crime in or the crime out?
Probably trying to keep the crime out, but it could keep the crime in too, I suppose. Because if you stayed in Funland after dark and then tried to do something, it would be hard to get out.
That Funland looked really fun.
Yeah, actually, it did look like a pretty interesting place. So, anyway, it takes them a while to get over because the guy's shoulder is pretty messed up.
Yeah, Ray's shoulder's still hurt from the car accident.
And so and then
not car accident, jumping out of the cab.
He takes like a fall. That was actually kind of a funny moment when he like falls off of the.
Pain is funny in these types of movies.
And these types of movies somehow they make it's not slapstick, but it's still funny for some reason.
Yeah.
And so they go in and they're having a hard time finding it, and there's a security guard who saw them the whole time on the cameras going over the fence. I don't know how they didn't think about this. I didn't even think about the fact that
all I'm saying is this guy's guarding Funland, and he was skinny and short.
He was really skinny, and guess what his name was? Dash. Dash. And this actor guy, he was in Captain Phillips. Yes, he got in a British Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor.
Wow, not in this movie though, right?
Not in this movie. No, he was a very minor character in this movie. Yeah. But he wasn't bad. He
wasn't bad at all. He was I think he's the best character in this movie.
The best character.
Morally.
No, yeah. Actually, I would agree with that.
He's just trying to protect Funland.
Yeah, and he gets Ray, and he zip ties him to the counter.
He captures Ray right away.
But Connie tackles him and beats him up. Oh. And it was brutal. Like,
more face stuff.
Like, Connie did not have to go this hard on this guy, and he did. It was tough to see, and then he strips off the jacket, puts it on, and takes him somewhere.
He does an old switcheroo. Connie dresses up like the security guard, and the security guard's face is bashed in. So that's another. What are the directors called again?
The Safdie Brothers.
The Safdie Brothers love face injuries so much.
Injuries.
I am just realizing how many face injuries are in this movie.
So we got another face injury, and then the police show up, and they're kind of like, "Wait, we were here like this long. What took you so long?" And he was like, "Hey, I was just trying to." I forget what excuse he gave. He gave some sort of excuse, and then he
unimportant.
He kind of got the police to leave, but the police talked to Annie.
Yeah.
And Annie's not telling him anything, and so they take her in the police car.
Yeah.
And she goes away, and I don't think we ever see Annie again in the rest of the movie.
Nope. So Annie, her storyline is she trusts this guy that made a move on her, and she got in trouble for it. So guilty by association.
Guilty by association. Now, Annie was in a vulnerable situation because of her grandma. If he would have done that and she wouldn't have responded, would it have changed anything? Not sure. But you just got to be careful when you're around these characters, though.
Stranger danger.
Don't put yourself in bad situations because bad people will do bad things. It is the bad people's fault that they do bad things, but don't put yourself in bad situations.
And don't enable them.
Don't enable them, yeah. Anyway, so now that we're off of our soapbox here, we can go back to Connie, who has stolen the security guard vehicle and made Ray lay in the back so they couldn't see him.
Yep. So Ray and Connie are getting away. Connie realizes that Annie got caught, but doesn't care because Connie only cares about getting his brother out of that hospital.
Oh, and they take it back to the security guard's apartment, right?
So yeah, Connie realizes that he has all of the security guard stuff. He has his keys, his car, his wallet, so he goes to the security guard's apartment. Which, I don't know what Funland's paying him, because his apartment was really
This
nice.
was a nice apartment.
Yeah.
Like, well decorated, just very nice looking apartment. And, we didn't mention this. So there's a really interesting part in the scene where Connie is with the young girl that a commercial with dogs comes up, and Connie says, "Dogs love me."
Yeah, it's just a throwaway. You think it's a throwaway.
You think it's a throwaway line, but we get to the apartment, there's a dog, and the dog loves Connie.
It's a guard dog. It's like a pit. It's a what kind of dog was it?
It looked like some sort of pit bull something, but I don't know that much about dog breeds. So
yeah, I don't know.
And so we realize that Connie can kind of control this dog, but Ray can't, and this turns out to be pretty important. So they're trying to figure out what to do. They still have the bottle of acid.
Yeah, they picked up the bottle of acid from Funland, which is worth a lot of money.
So they want Khalif to come over, and they're trying to work out a deal. But when Khalif comes over in the morning, and Ray is like on the couch. It says some sort of line about they're basically arguing about which one's the bigger screw up.
Yeah.
Ray or Connie, and I would think that to the answer to that I think they're both kind of screw ups.
Yeah, it's a whole screwed up. Security guard is the only good guy.
Yeah, Connie has more of a plan, but his plans are pretty terrible, and they keep mounting on each other and getting worse.
Yeah.
And Ray's just kind of living life, but that's not really working out for him.
Yeah, it's not.
And so we get back to and so Khalif comes to pick up the thing, but then
Khalif has to go back to the bank to get the money.
But he has to go back to the bank
to buy the acid.
To buy the acid, and they working out a deal, and he has the dog that's protecting him. So Khalif can't just take it from him.
Yeah.
Because Khalif's a much bigger guy than Connie.
Yeah.
So if it was just fists, I'm pretty sure Khalif would win. But since he has the dog, Khalif has to pay mind to him. And he says he's going to go back to the bank. He leaves to go back to the bank. But then Connie and Ray scuffle because Connie is leaving with the bottle of acid. He's not. So what we learn is that the bottle of acid must be worth more than $15,000 because that's what he's going to pay him. And he wouldn't pay him that if the bottle of acid was worth less than $15,000. So.
Yeah. I guess acid sells, huh?
Acid, well, that big of a bottle. I don't know that you need a lot of acid to get whatever.
Tell us from your experience.
I don't really. I don't know.
Okay.
I've heard people tell stories of being on acid.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't know how much acid you have to take to experience the effect.
Anyhow, this is basically the end of the movie at this point because he runs out with the acid because he doesn't want to make the deal, and the cops are right there waiting for him.
Yeah, the cops have tracked him down, and you kind of can tell how they probably figured out the security guard thing, and they
that
probably
was
tracked
pretty
his
easy.
car back. They don't really explain that, but I guess you can probably figure that out. And then we got this cool chase scene that's like filmed from the balcony.
Well, before he runs out, I do want to say that he tried to call the hospital and figure out where his brother was, but the hospital said that they can't give out any information. And that's before Connie gets chased by the police. That's the last he hears of what happened to his brother.
Right.
In this movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's the last that he hears. So we got this cool chase scene that's like above, like filmed from the balcony. So you see that instead of them being like a chase shot, it's like an aerial shot, which I thought was really interesting. But we see that there's no way he's getting away. But he drops the bottle of acid, and then Ray calls Khalif and is like, the bottle of acid is here.
Yeah.
But then Ray does something really weird.
What?
Which is that...
What does he do?
Ray goes, instead of going down, and presumably he's going to get in trouble with the police too.
Yeah.
He tries to climb down from the balcony and like climb down the building, which they're several floors up.
Yeah, their apartment complex was probably on the 10th floor or 8th floor or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty high up. And this was the part of the movie that was most confusing to me.
Yeah, it definitely was confusing.
Because it's like, why would Ray do that? The police are outside. They can see him. They can get him right when he gets to the ground. So he might as well just give himself up. Unless he was planning on doing it on purpose. Because he falls from the balcony and presumably he dies. I mean, we don't get any
think 8
confirmation.
stories is enough to die. I don't know. Maybe like 5 or 4 is survivable, but I feel like with that kind of gravity and acceleration, you're gonna die at 8 at least.
Yeah, he most likely died.
Or at least get some more face
and then
damage.
We
something
see
like that.
the last image of Connie in the back of a squad car.
Yes.
Going to jail.
Then it cuts to Nick. We finally get to see Nick from when he got caught and gets beat up in jail. That happened in the beginning of the movie, and we finally get to see what happens to his brother. So Connie fails. Connie doesn't get to see his brother. He doesn't know what happened. No redemption there. But his brother Nick, it shows him, and he's got his life back on track. He's enrolled in a special needs class, and his therapist is there, and his therapist introduces him to his class, and you can tell everybody there's people with Down syndrome there, there's people with cerebral palsy in there, there's other people, lots of people that have special needs in this room, and they're part of a class. And the person leading the group invited Nick in, said, let's play this game. And basically they just play a simple game, like walk to this wall if you like this object, or walk to this wall if you don't like this object. And that's the game that they play. And the credits start rolling as it shows Nick looking defeated, because you can tell Nick understands things. He may have a speech, hearing, and eye impediment, but he can understand things still. So he looks super defeated because the world looks at him in that way, that Nick doesn't feel like he needs to be in this class, and you feel like as the watcher that he doesn't need to be part of that class either. So
yeah, and this is where you think the movie you think it's gonna end with Connie in the squad car, and you're like, where is this going? And then you see that scene with Nick, and it rolls into the credits, and you're like, wow. It's a powerful image to end a movie that is so chaotic and confusing, and has taken us so long to explain.
True. You don't get what the movie is trying to explain until the end, and I think that it was trying to explain that Connie saw his brother Nick as more than just what was wrong with him, and he would always encourage him and stuff, but then at the end of the movie, that's all that anyone else in the world saw. That's all Nick's grandma saw. That's all the therapist saw. That's all the people in the special needs class saw.
But ultimately, Connie failed Nick, because his offer for a meaningful life was something that put him in danger.
Yeah. Because
that situation where Nick was in the jail, which was arguably Connie's fault, because it wasn't Nick who came up with the idea to rob the bank.
Connie was the leader in everything.
So that put him in a situation where he could have gotten more hurt than he did. And so to say that Connie is he understands his brother better than other people, but he still doesn't help him figure out. But that probably we're getting ahead of ourselves there.
Yeah. So Ben and I created this type of rating system to rate movies that we're going to try to stick to, and we might change it later on. But right now we like it. So.
Right now we like it, and it's not perfect because
it is perfect. It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
You could get through all 8, and the movie might still be boring.
Yeah. There's 8 categories. We're going to go through our 8 real quick, and then at the end we're going to do final thoughts on the movie.
Right.
So
yes.
What's the first category?
The first category is let's do sentiment first.
Okay, so sentiment.
Well, actually, no. Let's do plot first.
Plot.
Yes.
So basically, how interesting was the plot?
Uh,
What did you give it out of 10 first?
so I gave this a 7, which on my scale, I don't know how Zach is.
A 7.0?
A 7.0. So to me, that's pretty good.
Guess what I gave it?
A what?
A 7.
A 7.
I did.
So we both agree that the plot is pretty good.
Yeah. 7 means pretty good.
So I guess we spent a lot of time talking about it, and I think that's why I gave it that score, because
It was realistic.
it was realistic, and
As far as we know.
and it didn't tell you everything, didn't spill out everything. You had to think on your own, and that's like, to me,
That's how life is.
That's an interesting plot.
Yeah.
But it was messy at times.
Yeah.
And the ending is kind of like it's up for interpretation, which I like, but it's also, there's just some parts of the plot, like the underage part,
Yeah.
that I just didn't like as much. So it's
And all
not,
that face stuff.
and just there's other movies that have better plots.
Yeah. What's the next category?
Let's see. The next category is sentiment. So that's how much we sentimentally like this movie.
I gave it a 4.3
Oh my goodness.
out of 10.
4.3 out of 10. And I gave it an 8 because I really enjoyed watching this movie. Is that a little bit high? Time will tell. I think, if we look at my other movie ratings that I gave 8, it might be, that might be a little bit high. But I think that this movie, I like this movie the same amount as I like Shawshank. Sure.
If it makes you feel better, maybe Ben, just as a human being, has more sentiment than me in general.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And I think as we get to the other categories, we'll start to realize
that I'm a horrible person.
The differences
and Ben's a good
between
person.
me and Zach. Yes.
Yeah.
So
just like my grammar.
Unfortunately, we can't have too many debates because you can't really debate about who sentimentally likes the movie.
I'm just gonna say I gave it a 4.3 out of 10 because I didn't care about any characters besides Nick and the security guard, and both of them were barely in the movie.
Yeah, I like Connie, but he's not. You like him even though he's like the worst person, and so
I didn't.
Zach didn't like him at all.
No.
He's charismatic, so he's interesting to watch, but he's a terrible person.
He's like Iron Man when Iron Man was a D-bag.
All right, so now we're
Okay, good.
Now we're getting into the message, which we kind of started talking about.
Yeah, the message is how well did it convey its theme?
And I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 7.
Because this movie was pretty clever in how it
was. Because it doesn't explain what the movie is talking about until the credits. So that was clever, and it's also a very good message that needs to be talked about, especially in this day and age when people are getting put into categories and classes and everything's getting more specialized. So we do need to make sure that people are getting the right treatment for the lives that they have,
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because some people were upset at Benny Safdie's performance as Nick because he had a disability, and I was kind of reading about people who were upset. There's actually a review here on the Wikipedia page.
Very reliable.
Yeah, so A.O. Scott of the New York Times said, sometimes it flaunts cliches, Nick's disability, and Benny Safdie's slack-jawed portrayal of it is a big one. So he obviously thought that...
It's just the New York Times, though. What do they know?
That it was a bad performance. But I don't think they quite got the deeper meaning of who...
A.O. Scott is an idiot. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah, A.O. Scott, you didn't understand Nick.
A.O. Scott, if you're listening, we don't like you.
The world saw Nick as cliche, but his brother did not. So that's what you're supposed to see when you see Benny Safdie act as him. So him acting as cliche is not bad because when he acts cliche is when he's acting in front of the psychologist and his grandma who think that this is who he is.
That last scene where he looks defeated because he's in the special needs class, that was not cliche.
Yeah. So I completely disagree with that. And
A.O. Scott's an idiot.
And I think having a bank robbery kind of like train wreck movie, I mean, this is basically a movie that's just a train wreck.
Yeah.
And be about something like family is really interesting.
It's like my love life, man. Yeah.
A train wreck.
Yeah.
Hey, email us at our non-existent email
Yeah.
to get Zach interested.
Just pray really hard, and maybe we'll end up together.
Yeah, that's true. That could work. That is something that they didn't do in this movie a lot.
Pray.
They didn't pray a lot.
No.
Of course, I don't know that God would answer your prayers if they involve you robbing a bank. But
and, if you're on acid, I don't know if you're talking to the right God.
Yeah, you might be talking to a demon at that point. Then we go to character arcs, which I feel like we're going to disagree on.
Or do we?
I think this one is a 7. I mean, I didn't give it an 8, which I gave the message, but the character arcs were good. Connie's wasn't as good as Nick's, but Nick's is more subtle and he's not in as much of the movie.
I think Nick's was the most powerful.
Nick's was the most powerful. We don't get a lot of other arcs besides Nick and Connie because Ray is a really static character.
Yeah.
He just is like there. But the 2 character arcs that there are, we don't really know what Connie learned from this.
Yeah, I gave it a 5. I gave it a 5 because it's average, because there are some good ones like Nick's, but he's barely in the movie.
Yeah, I think I'm going to bump this down to a 6 because when you mentioned
there we go,
that,
he's changing it right now.
Yeah, I knew I was going to do this because, and I'm not going to give it a 5 because I still think it's a little bit above average because of Nick, but I think Connie's character arc is a little bit weak, even though the other parts are interesting.
Yeah.
And here's where we're really going to disagree.
What?
We're talking about cinematography.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's make this clear. We didn't mention this, but if you've seen the movie, you know that most of the time you don't know what's going on because the camera is so zoomed in on everybody's faces.
Yeah, so this style of cinematography is it's supposed to make you like, it's very jarring, very kind of like quick transitions and zooms. So you like, it's sometimes hard to like figure out where you are. The camera shakes sometimes.
Yeah.
And then we get these zooms and then we get it juxtaposed with these weird aerial shots every once in a while.
So Ben's talking it down, but Ben, why don't you tell him what you put as your number?
I gave this an 8 because I think this is a very creative style that I personally like.
Ben thinks that shaking the camera and forgetting
it was
everything.
if they didn't shoot the movie like this, it wouldn't have been as good. It wouldn't have not have been as good of a movie.
That's right, I disagree. I give it a 3.9.
Wow.
I give it
harsh.
a 3.9 out of 10.
Zach is not a fan of this
I wrote a
style.
note, close-ups on faces, unable to see what's going on.
Yeah, but if you weren't able to see what's going
No,
on,
I know.
That adds an element to the movie.
I know it adds an element, but when I'm watching a movie, I don't want to just see one person's face on the screen the entire movie. It's a creative style, but it's just not good.
It's much harder on your eyes.
Like
and this is going to go back to their other movie, Uncut Gems, which is shot very similarly to this movie.
Which I've not seen.
That is, and if you don't like this movie, I don't think you would like that movie's cinematography either. And it does a lot of similar things to this movie, but it's hard to not compare the two because there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
And you kind of start to see, oh, this is the Safdie Brothers. When they make another movie after Uncut Gems, is it going to be
basically if they
like
have
this?
if they have more than 2 faces being bashed in, then it's the Safdie Brothers.
Because Uncut Gems is once again a movie about a train wreck that happens and bad things happening.
Does anybody's face get bashed in?
There are a couple of scenes where people get beat up, but I'm not sure whether they get beat up in the face. Okay. But see, I highly recommend Uncut Gems. It was kind of the Safdie Brothers. This movie, it was like kind of popular, but Uncut Gems was like a lot more popular. This production studio, A24, they're famous for like releasing these kind of independent or like kind of out there movies.
Yeah.
And Uncut Gems was their highest grossing movie, and that was by these same guys. So then we're gonna get to originality, which. Wait, did you gave your score? Okay.
I did.
So
What's your originality score?
I gave it an 8 because, and I think I gave it an 8 more because of the cinematography style.
Okay.
That was probably the highest thing that I gave 8 for. Because if you look at it as a movie, there's been plenty of movies that have been like train wrecks and there's complicated plot. Actually, you know what? I gave it a 7 because I'm thinking about it and I'm like,
taking it down a
the
notch.
plot was, this isn't the first time that anybody's done like a plot that is like a train wreck.
Yeah.
And that's like the point of the movie is that it's all these bad things happen.
True. I'd say that's more style though.
Yeah.
I'd say Trainwreck is more style, which is another category. But I gave originality a 6.8 just because I do think it's above average because some of the ways that they got out of situations and some of the dialogue that they had, I'd never seen in movies before, so it was pretty cool. I mean, Robert Pattinson, he's a good actor. Hopefully he's a good Batman and not just some kind of, what is he, a vampire or in Twilight? Is he the vampire or the werewolf?
I think he might be the werewolf, but I honestly have no idea.
Or is he the girl? I don't know.
No, he's not the girl.
Yeah.
Isn't the guy the werewolf?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to anybody who's getting offended right now.
And I changed the score for acting, my acting too, so now originality.
So after originality is acting.
Ooh, the acting in this movie. So, do you want to give your score first?
Yeah, ours are close. I gave it 7.2.
7.2. I gave it an 8, and I think Pattinson he's basically the actor. Like, he's in every scene, besides like two, the start and the beginning, and he gives a really good performance.
He portrays an idiot very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he dyes his hair blonde, he looks pretty epic. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. We forgot to mention he dyes his hair.
Yeah, that was also in that eventful living room scene.
At first, I wasn't used to it. Like, I was like, that's not a good hair dye. But then, throughout the movie, I was like, okay, I kind of like that.
It was pretty, like the acting. Everybody else, all the supporting characters, none of them were particularly spectacular, but they all did their job really well.
Yeah.
Benny Safdie as Nick is going to be the most controversial character. If you don't like his portrayal,
I thought he was good though.
Then you will probably rate it lower. But yeah, I liked his portrayal. It was good.
Everybody else was decent.
Do you think anybody else like really stood out? Ray was good.
Ray was good, but you could tell he could probably only do comedy roles.
And the interesting thing is that if you look at a lot of these actors on the site, a lot of them don't have like their own Wikipedia pages, which would imply that they haven't been in that many roles.
Yeah.
So, and you could kind of tell. Obviously, the guy who
I mean, this was a low budget movie. How much was it?
It was $2 million.
Yeah, so that's really low.
Yeah, it's $2 million.
And the box office was 4.1.
Yeah, so they made money on it, so good on them.
But that means Robert Pattinson got paid less than $1 million, when he's going to be making millions and millions in this next Batman
Robert
movie.
Pattinson clearly did this movie because he wanted to, not because he wanted to make money. He's already made a ton of money on Twilight. He's about to make a ton of money on Batman. Like, I can't even imagine how much. But
yeah, well, the last category is style, as we mentioned.
This one.
I do think what you said earlier was true. The style of it being like a train wreck / like gritty, realistic movie. I think it's used a lot, and I don't care. But like, I did not particularly like it that much. I gave it a 4.1.
I gave it an 8, but I think we were looking at style a different way. For me, I was looking at style. I thought the soundtrack was really good. It was a very good soundtrack. The lighting was one of my favorite parts of the movies, particularly in the living room scene. There was a lot of good uses of like multicolored
neon
lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other like the carnival scene, the flashback scene, lots of good lighting.
Yeah.
And just the style that they filmed it in. It was good.
Yeah, that's true. All right, that's all the categories. So out of 80, what did yours go?
All right, so our final scores, I gave this movie a total, a 60 out of 80, which is equal to about 75%. And Zach?
I gave it a 45.3 out of 80.
So,
which is a 56.6% rating.
So
good job.
If we
good
average
job.
out 50, 75, and 56, we get 65.5% as our average score, which
that's fair. That's fair.
I think that's a fair score.
I think you highballed it and I lowballed it.
I highballed it. Zach lowballed it, and we got it right in the middle. And 65%. We
middleballed it together.
That would be above. That would be a Rotten Tomatoes fresh, slightly. So and yeah, that's fair. It's a unique movie, but it is flawed in parts.
So before we end this, any final thoughts, Ben?
Well, it's just interesting comparing our score. Rotten Tomatoes is 92%, which is pretty high. But we have to remember is a review aggregator. So Metacritic score would be interesting for a good time.
I don't know. I think the movie doesn't deserve a 92 from Rotten Tomatoes. I think
it's higher than a lot of movies that
it was. In the end, it was low budget, and with low budget movies, you got to stick to characters, and I don't think that they did stick to characters as much as they could have.
So what I think the conclusion for this movie is that if you really appreciate style and a certain type of style, especially a very like chaotic, just jarring style of movie, kind of gritty movie. Then you'll really like this. But if you're looking for really, really top tier character development and really good dialogue, I don't think you're gonna find that.
Yeah, you should go to Breaking Bad for that.
Yeah, you have to go to something that's a little bit more like spread out and longer, because this movie is pretty short at 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Yep, it was, and that's credits include. I guess that's not credits included because the film still goes on during the credits.
Yeah, that's true.
So, anyway, so we appreciate you guys listening, and this has been the Movie Vault.
Until next time, peace out.
Peace.